Good evening. I'm Kelly Wright. Thanks for joining us tonight. I do sincerely hope that you're safe and well, taking care of yourself and your family. And certainly we need to do that in these troubling times. The coronavirus, as you know, is having an upsurge, and many people are quite concerned about its spread. In addition to that, we still have the issue of racism. In addition to that, we still have the issue of the political divisions that we have, and the unemployment rate continues to rise. So it leads me to my opening observations about America, my America, your America, our America. Where are we? In my America, my children are black, brown, yellow, red, and white, one shade of beautiful in God's precious sight. In my America, all lives, black lives matter. So I pray we one day get to a point where we stop the chatter that tears us apart, because we are a family, choosing to agree or disagree, yet still striving to live in harmony. Why has harmony, unity, become so elusive? How long will it take for us to really reach that grand vision that Thomas Jefferson wrote about in the Declaration of Independence, which simply states this: we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that should never be denied to any man, woman, or child living in these United States of America. Let's remember one fundamental fact: united we will stand, divided we will fall. It's time to stand united and get it together. And those are my opening observations. We're seeing division racially and politically right now, as all eyes are on the Senate and the House in terms of what they will do about policing reform. Let's be clear, there are protesters still out in the streets because they want to see a change in the way we police ourselves. They want to see changes take place within the police department. Yet on Capitol Hill, members of Congress are at odds. They're at division. And it's become quite contentious. So much so that it causes a lot of Americans to give pause, saying, if we can't get ourselves politically together, how can we move forward with staying together and building a together community in terms of how we police and train our police officers, and in terms of building up the trust within all communities, particularly the African American community, as it relates to our police relationships. But here's what's happening. The Democratic-controlled House is due to consider the legislation a month to the day after George Floyd's May 25th death in police custody. You remember that. It set off the worldwide protests against police brutality that we see today. The bill in the House, which mandates concrete changes in laws and policy to rein in police misconduct, is widely expected to pass the House, but the Republican-led Senate, well, there's a problem there. It's unlikely to agree to the measure as it is written after Senate Democrats there blocked a Republican reform bill on Wednesday. Senator Tim Scott, the African-American senator from South Carolina, weighed in on that blockage from the Senate floor. Here's what he had to say, and followed by a response from Senators Cory Booker and Kamala Harris.
You see, this process is not broken because of the legislation. This is a broken process beyond that one piece of legislation. It's one of the reasons why communities of color, young Americans of all colors, are losing faith in the institutions of authority and power in this nation. What, pray tell, is the problem? Well, I finally realized what the problem is, Mr. President. The actual problem is not what is being offered, it is who is offering it. We were 4 votes short of saying yes to having a powerful tool of pulling resources to compel behavior on chokeholds. Because I believe if we've gotten on the bill, we would have passed this bill. But that is the problem, by the way. That's the who I'm talking about. See, as a black guy, I know how it feels to walk into a store and have the little clerk follow me around, even as a United States Senator. I get that. I've experienced that. I understand the traffic stops. I understand that when I'm walking down the street and some young lady clutches onto her purse, and my instinct is to get a little further away because I don't want any issues with anybody. I understand that. But what I missed in this issue is that the stereotyping of Republicans is just as toxic and poison to the outcomes of the most vulnerable communities in this nation. That's the issue.
You know, Mitch McConnell has described himself as the Grim Reaper. And I think that this is the moment we're going to see. Is we going to allow him to kill any hope of getting a bill on the floor that will actually create the kind of reforms that in America, Republicans and Democrats want? It's time for us to stop the partisan attempts to turn the page and to stay on this issue, to do the work, to come together, and to make sure that we deliver the kind of reform and the kind of justice that this nation has been seeking.
I want to thank all of our colleagues for their work today, which is to not fall into a political trap, to not take crumbs on the table when there is a hunger that America has for real solutions to a very real problem. There's a movement at play here, and that movement did not just start a few weeks ago. That movement started before Emmett Till. That movement was active and at play during the beating of Rodney King. We are part of a movement that started a long time ago, and this movement will not be deterred. And so let the beginning be today of a real conversation where the United States Congress will do its job in meeting the moment, in responding to the demands of the people, and doing what is well within our grasp to take at least one step closer to that ideal of equal justice under the law.
So as the House passes its bill, it still has trouble getting passed in the Senate. We're going to talk more about this when we return. My first guest now is Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, political analyst. And Doc, we've heard from Senator Tim Scott, Senators Kamala Harris, as well as Cory Booker. And we are so divided in our country that it seems we can't get an initial bill done in the Senate. We expect the House will likely vote today on this police reform bill. What do you think of what you heard from Senator Tim Scott and then the Democrat side as well? And why can't they see eye to eye on getting something done that will reform our police departments?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I do not doubt Senator Scott when he shares that he has faced discrimination, that he has himself felt the ire of racial profiling, specifically at the hands of police. I believe that he's telling the truth when he says that, but I believe that it is less than forthright to suggest that the Republican bill that has been offered does anything substantial to address the problem. And that is why the Democrats rightly blocked it. I mean, I would really describe the Republican bill as mirrors. You know, it's not really substantive. They are, for example, the Democratic version of the bill that's coming through the House specifically bans chokeholds. The Republican version says, well, in the case of when the police might believe that their life is in danger, that should be okay. We know every day of the week that every time a Black person is murdered, the first excuse that is offered is that, oh my God, my life is in danger. So nothing would substantively change. This is a moment where we don't need to bow down to smoke and mirrors and make some people believe that something substantive was done. Now is the time that there really is no compromise with that. How do you go halfway between those two? And so because of that, I believe that it's right to say we either stand up and do something substantive, or we wait, quite frankly, until we get a Senate that will.
Mm-hmm. And to your point, Senator Tim Scott was actually given a mandate by the president to go out and figure out a bill that could be provided for police reform. And so is it any surprise that that bill or that measure that Senator Tim Scott and the Republicans have issued in the Senate mirror the president's executive order on police reform, which again talked about chokeholds, but put a limitation on it, like you just said, where if it's an officer's life or death situation, the chokehold could apply. So the argument is still there on the Democrat side saying, wait a minute, we still have a problem here. We need to get rid of it once and for all, as Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, has indicated. So as we move forward, there's still the specter that this won't get done, right. even in between now and November.
Right. I honestly don't believe that it will get done, because I don't believe that there is really a authentic effort coming out of the Republican side to really move the needle on these issues. I think that there is a specific motivation to say that they've done something on it. But when you look at the substance of what they offered, it really is all smoke and mirrors. And it's the chokehold, it's the no-knock warrants, which the House committee, the House version bans, and the Republican version doesn't, which of course led to the death of Breonna Taylor. It's the ability to actually sue police when they murder people, and which the Democratic version allows and the Republican version doesn't, unless people take personal responsibility from these acts. Nothing is going to change. And those are just a few examples, but really what it seemed like their tactic was to take every specific point that the House bill made, try to look as if they were mirroring it, but in actuality, the way that legislation was written, it made each and every one of those points irrelevant. And because of that, in my mind, there really is no room for compromise when you seriously see a side of the aisle that has operated in bad faith for years. Let's just be honest, going all the way back from a stolen Supreme Court seat. Why would you believe that now all of a sudden they would operate in good faith when you see right in front of you that what they've offered in terms of legislation will do absolutely nothing when it comes to legitimately addressing this problem?
So look, it's become quite contentious on both sides. And we saw a good example of that last week when Congressman Matt Gaetz from Louisiana was arguing and actually even got into a heated exchange with Congressman Cedric Richmond of Georgia, when that Congressman Richmond, was explaining what it's like to be a Black man in America, much as we saw Senator Tim Scott do, except there was a heated exchange on the floor about what matters most in the streets of America, where young Black males are a moving target, if you will. Yeah. So if we have this kind of contention going on the House and the Senate side, what are the American people thinking? Because they want resolve. They want something done in terms of police reform. They want to see people's lives matter, Black, white, and whatever, to make sure that people are protected and that they're entitled to equal rights under the law and to have police truly protect and serve all communities.
Absolutely. Well, I hope that the American community can see that there is one side of the aisle that is about producing substantive change, and there's another side of the aisle that is about theatrics. If anyone knows anything about Representative Gatz, that's really what he is all about. He does this often. He's a very theatrical legislator. He oftentimes has outbursts that are nonsensical. Even that specific outburst, he was challenging a Black man with a Black son around his legitimacy to talk about the Black male experience in America by somehow suggesting that he should know it as a white man, whom later divulged that he's living with a 19-year-old Latino who he now calls his son. So, I don't, it's a distraction. And quite frankly, it's insulting to Black people who literally risk their lives every day when they just are navigating society legally and can have someone with a badge for no other reason than the color of their skin come up to them, challenge their legitimacy in terms of navigating that space, and kill them without their families having any sense of confidence that justice will ever be done.
And it is a problem that all of us have who wear this wonderful color called Black. Mm-hmm. And I say it's a wonderful color because it is beautiful, and we should let the world know that we're beautiful people trying to do the right thing each and every day that we get up. And we don't need to be a moving target, as I stated before, or under some sort of derision or be denigrated because we strive like anyone else to make our lives matter. And what concerns me right now is that there's this element that is trying to castigate Black Lives Matter and the entire movement, claiming that it's a Marxist movement, and it gets into the political stream, and it gets into the political psyche and thought that we see even from some members there on Capitol Hill who are also espousing these kinds of things. And we see that some white evangelicals are saying the same thing. So my problem with all of this, Avis, is that this is a time we should stop, pointing fingers at each other and maliciously wounding each other, and truly come together to help our police departments, to help Black lives deal with this issue so that we can bridge that divide and repair that breach. And yet I see on Capitol Hill that it's broken.
I completely agree with you. And the one place where I take solace is that if you look at the polls, the American people seem to be coalescing around this issue a lot more than Capitol Hill seems to be. If you look at the latest polls on the issue, we're now seeing more than 70% of white people agreeing with the whole movement around the value of Black lives. And so they too are looking at what's going on in Capitol Hill. And I'm hoping that they're seeing with disgust that a lot of the people that they voted for to send there are not reflecting their ideals in this moment. And I'm hoping that they will remember that come November, when it comes to really making sure that we have leadership that more truly reflects the direction of the American people, which I do believe is moving in the right direction on this issue.
I've often said that Congress needs to practice CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, except in their case, Congress performing responsibly. And being having the heart of what the American people truly desire, and that is a country where we're all treated equally and fairly. Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, I appreciate your political analysis of this. Certainly, we've got a tough road to hoe in the midst of coronavirus, in the midst of racism, and people trying to deny that on all levels. Some people are not wearing a mask because they think that they're clear of it. So it's just, how long does this go on? Hopefully, as Dr. King said, not long. It's time to do something. Thank you, Avis.
Thank you so much.
All right, appreciate you being on the program. We're coming back with more after this. Welcome back to the program. So joining me now is Dr. Yolanda Hancock. She is a pediatrician and a member of the Milken Institute of Public Health there at the George Washington University. And Doc, it's good of you to join us. You know, we've been having this conversation since COVID-19 broke out. And at one point we thought we would see it subside, but as you know, it's surging. And I like the way you explained it the other day, that we're seeing a tidal wave of
Right.
COVID-19. Why is that?
It's because it's for several reasons. We don't have national leadership that's setting the specific agenda for benchmarks and requiring that each state meet those before we progress in our phased openings. Two, we have states that even if there were national benchmarks for opening, clearly they would ignore them because they're ignoring them in their own states. And then third, but even I think what's most important is individual behavior, right? In medicine, we know that people's choice determines outcome, but that happens in the context of where they live. And if people are not practicing social distancing and wearing masks, we're going to continue to see this tidal wave consume us.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right. And I don't want to point fingers or malign anyone, but some of the governors of these states that were throwing caution to the wind to reopen their states prematurely, they went against the grain of a lot of doctors and a lot of good science that said, hold on, take your time, do not mess with this virus because it will come back to bite you. And
Right.
in fact, that's what we're seeing. And I would say more than a bite, it's devouring some states.
Exactly. You're very diplomatic. I'm at least going to call some states out. I won't name names, but I will call
Okay.
out states like Texas and Florida and Georgia, the states that were the last to close and the first to open. Those are the states that we see surges in. As of Tuesday, record numbers of COVID cases happened, over 5,000 cases in states like Florida, Texas, and California. California had over 7,000 new cases in a 24-hour period of time. Overall, within the United States, by Tuesday, we had 35,000 new cases within a 24-hour period of time. That is a record setter compared to where we were in April, and the third highest number of new cases since the pandemic began. So that's one marker that lets us know that we are not doing what we're supposed to do in terms of protecting everybody.
What will it take to stop this from spreading?
We've talked about it since the beginning of the pandemic. It's Public Health 101. It's wearing a mask to decrease your neighbor, your friend, your community member's risk of getting COVID-19 if you are positive and don't know it. It's social distancing because studies have shown over and over and over again that it's that close person-to-person contact that puts us most at risk. And those super spreader events where we are congregated in tight spaces, whether it be at senior living facilities, at a bar or restaurant, or at a concert. I just read a news report where I believe in Wisconsin, they're going to have an anti-COVID or a herd immunity party, big concert. That's going to spread COVID, and their purpose is for that to happen. So when you're not wearing your mask, you're not practicing social distancing, we're not testing, right? We talk about the federal government threatening to remove financial support to provide states with tests. Just because we don't test doesn't make COVID disappear.
Look, let's be clear. Some of these governors in these particular states followed the lead from the president. And the president is still talking about slow the testing down. The president is still talking about not having to wear a mask. And that's, as we talked about before, has caused an alarming debate culturally about to wear a mask or not to wear a mask, to the point that people are kind of vitriolic in their disdain for each other because one chooses to wear a mask to safeguard themselves and that person arguing with them about not wearing a mask. I just find that this is a silly place to be when we're dealing with something as serious as coronavirus.
When you decide to make a mask a political issue, then all of the data, the science, the expertise behind the recommendation for it goes by the wayside because it becomes a politically charged issue, just like abortion, gay marriage. It gets put in that category. And never once did I think that wearing a mask would be so politicized.
Well said, Doc. I'd like you to stay with me because on the other side of the break, we'll talk about that shirt you're wearing, Black Lives Matter, and the fact that a lot of the protesters who have been out there protesting have worn masks, and consequently, it surprised some people that the surge did not happen as anticipated within amongst those populations. However, there are a lot of young Black folks not taking heed to your
Right.
advice and the advice of doctors. We'll talk about that when we return. Welcome back. I'm talking to Dr. Yolanda Hancock, a pediatrician, as well as a member of the Milken Institute of Public Health at the George Washington University here in the DC area. And here we are in the nation's capital, Doc. And, you know, a lot of people who have gathered at Black Lives Matter Plaza have been white and Black and Latino, all colors of the rainbow, all faiths, all denominations coming together to protest for an end to police brutality, to protest for bringing people together across political and racial division lines. And I've been there and I've seen people wear masks. And it's really astounding to see that they have paid attention to it. Yet I've gone to other places and I have not seen people in public settings like a protest, but like on the beach or some other places where they're not wearing masks at all. In particular, I saw several groups of young Black Americans, teenagers, young adults not wearing masks. And I'm wondering, are you not paying attention to the fact that the Black community and the brown community and the Native American community are disproportionately impacted by this coronavirus? What's up with this?
I think there are two really clear reasons for it. One, because historically from the start of the pandemic, it was presented as an old people disease, as a disease of if you have chronic diseases or if you're immunocompromised. So young folks don't see themselves in those categories, right? And then there's the beauty and ignorance of youth, feeling invincible. It's just a developmental fact that between the teenage to early 20 development, as a pediatrician, I know this very well, young folks do not see their own mortality in front of them. So they do not see this as a risk. And the third thing is proximity. If you have not been in close contact with someone who was significantly ill from COVID-19, then the danger of it isn't really a reality. So there isn't a perceived threat, therefore a change in behavior. But what I would compel young people to do, if you are watching, if your Nana, your loved one who is at risk is watching, they need to convince you that you need to be wearing a mask whenever you're out in public and that you need to be social distancing. As we are getting ready to go out and return to life as normal, have your core group of 10 or 20 that you can trust if you're going to be out with your friends, right? But you have to make sure that of those 10 to 20 that they don't also have 10 to 20, because for every certain person that is connected to you, that increases not only your risk, but your loved one's risk of acquiring COVID-19. And it isn't that young people aren't dying from COVID-19, you are just at less risk, but we're all at risk, which is why we should all protect each other.
Finally, Doc, you are actively engaged in helping communities. I know that you're wearing your Black Lives Matter T-shirt because you were out and about to try to help people by just dispersing or distributing masks. Tell me about that program and how you've been leading the way, or at least helping others to lead the way in making sure that people get safety equipment like masks.
I have to give credit where credit is due. One of our local council members here in Prince George's County, the council member for District 9, Sidney Harrison, he and his team actually led the charge. They have the second highest senior population here in Prince George's County. And what we know in the state of Maryland is that 51% of the deaths from COVID were in senior communities. So what he asked me to do was to assist him and the Fort Washington alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Hey Sorors, to provide to the frontline workers, the essential workers providing care to our elders, our seniors, and to make sure that our seniors are also protected with surgical masks. So it was our mission today to make sure that we deliver those materials to individuals so that our seniors, people are moving on about with COVID, they're looking at other issues, but our seniors are still at significant threat. Of those who die from COVID-19, the majority of those are 65 and older. So I have to commend Councilmember Harrison because he truly is putting health as a priority in his district. The county council is doing the same in terms of how they legislate. I just serve as a conduit and a connector of resources in the way that God has blessed me to be able to do.
Dr. Yolanda Hancock, always a pleasure to have you on this program. Keep keeping on with the great things that you're doing and keep us informed and help us protect ourselves. God bless you.
God bless you too.
Coming back with more after this. Welcome to the Kelly Wright Show. So we're taking a special focus on a very important issue that affects our community. It's HIV prevention. You know, there have been a lot of comparisons recently in the news about how what is happening today is actually quite similar to the early days of HIV. It's been nearly 40 years now since the US identified the first cases of illness resulting from the virus that would later become known as HIV. Scientists and the public have learned a great deal about it, and there have been encouraging decreases in recent years, and that's a good thing. But it is still an important health issue which disproportionately affects some Black communities. So today, in this two-part segment, the first of a two-part series, we are going to talk with guests about the impact of HIV on our Black community today. And let's welcome now Dr. Donna McCree. She is the CDC's Division of HIV/AIDS Prevention Associate Director for Health Equity. And then we have Dr. David Mailbranch, internal medicine physician working in the field of HIV/AIDS, both research and clinical. And he is also associate professor at Morehouse School of Medicine. Doctors, thank you for joining us on this important program and this important segment today. Welcome.
Thank you.
Dr. McCree, let me begin with you. You know, according to the CDC, the science of HIV has actually made great progress. And can you tell me, or can you tell us about the current goals in ending HIV here in the US?
Yes, of course. And thank you, Kelly, for the opportunity to talk to you today about this important initiative. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services has proposed the Ending the HIV Epidemic, a Plan for America. This is an initiative to reduce new HIV infections in the U.S. by 90% by 2030. And this initiative is actually going to leverage scientific advances that we've made in HIV prevention and diagnosis and treatment, and also in outbreak response by coordinating all of the highly successful programs, leveraging the resources and infrastructure of many of the HHS agencies and offices. So we're really excited about this new initiative.
You know, what you just stated is very remarkable to actually reduce it by 90% by 2030. However, we know that some communities are more adversely affected and impacted than others. Can you give us some basic facts, however, about how HIV and its impact is going on within the Black community?
Yes, so I want to leave you with three very important facts about HIV that everyone should know. First, anyone who engages in certain risk behaviors can get HIV, no matter your age, your race, your ethnicity, your gender, or your gender identity. There is no face to HIV. And two, there is a difference between HIV and AIDS. Sometimes we see that individuals don't understand the difference. HIV is a virus. That's the virus that actually attacks your body's immune system. That is the cells that fight infection in the body. There is no cure for HIV, but it is treatable with medicine. Now, without appropriate HIV treatment, the body's immune system becomes very weak, and a person with HIV may become sick with life-threatening illnesses. AIDS then is that stage of HIV that we see where the virus has attacked the body's immune system and it's become so weak that it has very limited ability to fight infection. And the last fact, it is important for persons with HIV to know their HIV status. so that they can take medicine to treat it as soon as possible. In fact, if taken as prescribed, HIV medicine reduces the amount of HIV in the body. That's called the viral load. And medicine can make the viral load so low that a test can't even detect it. We call that undetectable viral load. And getting and keeping an undetectable viral load prevents HIV transmission through sexual contact. In fact, that's something that research has shown to be true. And people with HIV can live long, healthy lives. And Kelly, you did ask about the effect of HIV among African Americans and Black communities. Some Black communities experience challenges that affect the health of the community, and those challenges also affect their risk for HIV infection. And these include lack of access to health care. That, just lack of access, and that's quality health care, can limit HIV testing or treatment. Poverty can limit access to basic needs, and it can force people into circumstances that can increase their HIV risk. And then the higher rates of incarceration that we see in some communities, that can actually disrupt social and sexual networks. And when that occurs, that may also increase the spread of HIV. And something that can be very pervasive, stigma, which is still around, can prevent some people from accessing prevention and care. And those are the challenges really that contribute to the higher rates of HIV infection that we see in some Black communities. In fact, in 2018, 42% of new HIV diagnoses were among African Americans, and 1 in 7 are unaware they have HIV. So that's a call to action. We have to tackle the challenges, and we have to ensure that everyone has access to appropriate and effective HIV prevention, care, and treatment services in order to address the impact of HIV in Black communities. Everyone has a role to play in this effort.
We'll come back with more of my discussion about HIV prevention in the Black community. That's next. Dr. David Malebranche, I want to bring you in for a moment to talk about this as well. You know, what's really startling here is that some people are walking around not even knowing that they have HIV. Talk to us, if you will, about how we can prevent HIV. What are some of the options? For example, if I was someone with HIV, what advice would you give to me to help keep myself and my loved ones healthy, thereby protecting my community as well?
Yeah, Kelly, that's a great question. And I'm also very happy to be here, especially discussing this topic. I think first off, we need to start our conversations with our sex partners, friends, and loved ones about ways that HIV can be transmitted. And no matter what you perceive your risk can be, anyone can be at risk for HIV. So for instance, we talk a lot about pre-exposure prophylaxis, which is also known as PrEP, as an HIV prevention option that works by taking 1 pill daily. And when it's taken daily, it can greatly reduce your risk of getting HIV from sex or from injecting drugs. And if you don't have HIV, if you're HIV negative and you're not on pre-exposure prophylaxis or PrEP, there is something called post-exposure prophylaxis or PEP that prevents HIV after a possible risk exposure with the virus. And so in this scenario, PEP must be started within 72 hours after a recent exposure and should be only used in emergency situations. You can also protect yourself, as we've been using condoms for decades now. If you use condoms correctly, you can use those. If you inject drugs, never share your needles or other injection equipment with other people. And get tested and treated for HIV and other STIs, and encourage your partners to do the same. What we encourage people to do is stay on top of your health and basically know your HIV status. The CDC recommends that everyone between the ages of 13 and 64 get tested for HIV at least once in their lifetime. Those who are at higher risk or maybe having sex more frequently or multiple partners should get tested more often. And you can visit the CDC's Let's Stop HIV Together website to learn more about your risk status and your HIV testing options. What we do know is that HIV testing in these days and times can be fast, confidential, and it's free. You can go to your local clinic or healthcare provider to get tested for HIV, or you can even take an HIV self-test, which is typically available from a local pharmacy or even online, you can do it in the comfort of your own home. So what I encourage people to do is check with your local health department to see if a free or reduced price testing kit is available where you live. Everyone, and Dr. McCree said this before, everyone should be making HIV testing part of their regular health routine, similar to how we screen for diabetes, high blood pressure, and get other regular checkups. And if I could take a moment to talk a little bit about if someone is living with HIV, because HIV prevention isn't just for people who are HIV negative. So if someone finds out they've tested positive for HIV, it may seem very scary at first, but just know that science has advanced so much since the 80s and 90s that there's no reason to think that HIV can stop you from living your best life. Talk to your healthcare provider, get on treatment right away, and decide the best care options for you. Again, like Dr. McCree said, the best way to become undetectable and prevent HIV transmission is to get on treatment. And the only way to do that is get in contact and get some help from your regular healthcare provider and support from your loved ones. You can both kind of figure out which medications, including when and how you may take them, are right for you. I emphasize to everyone all the time, there is no one-size-fits-all approach, and there are multiple avenues for treatment at this time. So find out what works best for you. And if you're experiencing any side effects, you can talk to your healthcare provider about possibly trying something else. The most important thing is for people to know that they need to stick to the treatment. Even if you've fallen out of treatment, it's not too late to get back on, and you can make a long-term commitment to your health. So definitely, if people are living with HIV and having trouble with it, I just want to give them the encouraging message that you can do this. Go to the CDC's Let's Stop HIV Together website at www.cdc.gov/stop HIV together to find free resources to help you talk about HIV with your loved ones.
So Doc, if you could repeat that website again, because I think it bears repeating so that we really can have our viewers not only look at it on the screen, but also hear it and go to it, because I love the fact that CDC is saying, let's stop HIV together.
Yeah, absolutely, Kelly. It's the CDC's Let's Stop HIV Together website, and it's www.cdc.gov/stop HIV together. Pretty easy, but they have a lot of great resources.
Absolutely. I want to thank you both for being the guests on my show today. This is only part one of a two-part series focusing on HIV prevention. So thank you, Dr. Donna McCree and Dr. David Melbranch, for discussing with us this very important topic on maximizing the effectiveness of current HIV prevention interventions and strategies among the Black community. So make sure you stay with us, because tomorrow we'll continue our focus on HIV prevention in the Black community. Back with more of the show after this. Welcome back. I want to thank everyone who appeared on tonight's program, and I especially want to thank each and every one of you for watching us tonight. I appreciate you. And my final word is this, that we learn to be united, ignited, and righted, to keep spreading not fear, but love, freedom, and peace. Good night.
The color of light isn't red, black, or white, but it's crimson.